I'm giving you a choice. Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
I already am eating from the trash can all the time. The name of this trash can is ideology.
What's up, everyone? Today I want to talk about one of the most unique films I've ever seen. It's called A Pervert's Guide to Ideology, and it's very interesting to say the least. Slavoj Žižek's film is an ambitious exploration of the pervasive presence of ideology in everyday life. He does this by analyzing popular films with the help of psychoanalysis. Now, Slavoj Žižek isn't known for presenting his messages in the most straightforward manner.
I hope, where I see, it's not that universalism does not mean, oh, we are all together, one big family. I hate this, what I call UNESCO universalism. Every culture is beautiful in its own way. No, every culture is horrible.
So I hope to break down some of the most prevalent messages in the film, or at least those I found the most interesting. To start, the title itself provokes curiosity by using the term pervert. It's not about literal perversion, but about revealing hidden, often contradictory desires and power structures embedded within ideology. He suggests that ideology operates not just in political structures, but in culture, films, religion, and even in our own personal values. By using the word pervert, he isn't referring to it in a sexual sense. In this context, the term pervert refers to someone who searches for and explores their hidden desires. This is fitting, as ideology is so concealed and tucked away, yet we live in it every day. So Žižek is essentially calling us people who want to uncover our secret desires. So what is ideology? Now, at its core, ideology refers to a system of ideas, values, and beliefs that shape how individuals understand and interact with the world. However, Žižek challenges this traditional view that ideology is a conscious set of ideas. Instead, he argues that it works more insidiously, often without people realizing its influence. Ideology for Žižek is not just a false consciousness that distorts reality, but it's actively structuring reality itself. We don't simply live in an ideology. Ideology lives within us. He suggests that the most powerful ideologies are the ones that we often are not aware of, those ideas that seem so natural or common sense that we don't question them. The real power of ideology, Žižek argues, is not that it hides the truth from us, but that it provides a framework through which we misinterpret the truth. I always say that when you abandon ideology, your new ideology becomes abandonment itself. Žižek also explains that when you think that you are outside of ideology, that's when you are the most deeply within it. For example, let's say you want to abandon the patriarchy, the so-called archetypal father figure that looms over humanity. Now, you might replace it with, let's say, feminism, claiming that it counters the patriarchy. But in doing so, you adopt a new ideology. This is why I say that when you abandon ideology, your new ideology becomes the act of abandoning it, meaning you are still operating within an ideological framework. Now, this film, Žižek refers to They Live. In They Live, the protagonist finds a pair of sunglasses that allow him to see the world as it truly is. Billboards, magazines, and advertisements are revealed as messages of control, with the word obey and consumed hidden beneath the normal content. This device, seen through the sunglasses, demonstrates how ideology makes the true nature of power and consumerism. The protagonist realizes that what he thought was normal reality is actually an ideological construction that supports a capitalist system designed to keep people passive and compliant. I particularly like the scene where the protagonist fights so hard to get his comrade to wear the sunglasses, but his friend simply refuses. The reason is that we often know we live in an fictional ideological world, but refuse to acknowledge it because it's too painful.
We, in a way, enjoy our ideology.
All right.
To step out of ideology, it hurts. It's a painful experience. You must force yourself to do it. This is rendered in a wonderful way with a further scene in the film where John Nada tries to force his best friend, John Armitage, to also put the glasses on.
I don't want to fight you. Come on. I don't want to fight you. Stop it. No!
And it's the weirdest scene in the film. The fight takes 8-9 minutes.
Put on the glasses.
It may appear irrational, because why does this guy reject so violently to put the glasses on? It is as if he is well aware that spontaneously he lives in a lie, that the glasses will make him see the truth, but that this truth can be painful, can shatter many of your illusions.
One scene that really resonates with me is when he looks at money.
Hey, buddy. You gonna pay for that or what? Look, buddy, I don't want no hassle today.
So this one time I was doing research on banks, and by chance I went down this rabbit hole of bank vaults. I was amazed by the amount of security, bulletproof glass, doors, fingerprint scanners, everything imaginable to protect what essentially is just paper. Now, this is hardly groundbreaking, but it struck me how we collectively believe in the value of money, even though in reality it's just paper. This ideology, as the movie suggests, becomes like a god to us. People will risk everything, their lives, their families, all just for an ideology. This is why I argue that ideology can be more real than reality itself. Okay, but on the topic of money, he also makes a critique of capitalism and money in particular. Now, I'm not really a capitalist or a communist, I'm more of a free market guy, but this critique is really interesting, and I'm actually very fond of it. So he basically says that capitalism as an ideology has a very similar substructure to that of religion, meaning that it is always busy and concerned with its own spread and growth. And most importantly, it's always busy with fighting and warding off anti-materialist critique, just as religion can be hostile towards other religions. So when consumerism was at its peak, where people were just buying and consuming and so on, people started to feel bad because they were being so materialistic and having so much fun, while there were a lot of other people that had nothing and were struggling, and global warming and whatever you can think of. So they obviously consumed less and less. Now, how capitalism warded off this attack against materialism was the following. So let's take an example used in the movie. Starbucks sells coffee, and this is usually much more expensive than it needs to be. So Starbucks will say, well, our coffee is more expensive than other coffee, but $1 or $2 of this price goes to hungry Ethiopian children, or we will plant a tree with one of your dollars. Now, all of a sudden, the consumer doesn't feel bad about the price anymore, and he feels that his obligation to be altruistic towards his, let's say, fellow world is already done. So now we go on consuming without feeling guilty. So capitalism's fight and solution towards anti-capitalism and anti-materialism is already included within the price. It's just very interesting. Okay, so in conclusion, Žižek uses the film They Live to argue that we need metaphorical sunglasses to see through the ideology shaping our lives. He emphasizes that ideology isn't just imposed from above, but is embedded in everyday practices and in entertainment, shaping how we perceive reality. Without these sunglasses, we remain blind to the power systems controlling our actions and desires. Okay, so next he analyzes Beethoven's Ode to Joy, the soundtrack of ideology. Now, the symphony is widely recognized as a symbol of human unity and peace. However, he points out that this piece of music has been appropriated in various contexts, ranging from its use by Nazi Germany to its adoption as the European Union's anthem.
What does this famous Ode to Joy stand for? It's usually perceived as a kind of an ode to humanity as such, to the brotherhood and freedom of all people. And what strikes the eye here is the universal adaptability of this well-known melody. It can be used by political movements which are totally opposed to each other. In Nazi Germany, it was widely used to celebrate great public events. In Soviet Union, Beethoven was lionized and the Ode to Joy was performed almost as a kind of a communist song.
By showing how Ode to Joy can symbolize vastly different ideologies, Žižek illustrates that even cultural products which seem universally positive and neutral are never free from ideological interpretations. The music itself may remain unchanged, but the ideological framework surrounding it alters its meaning. This highlights how ideology works by repurposing cultural artifacts to suit different ends, showing that even the most cherished symbols of unity can be co-opted to serve contradictory ideologies. Now, through Ode to Joy, he argues that ideology isn't just about content. It's also about the form in which content is presented and the context in which it is used. Now, this reminds me of an artwork from Zdzisław Beksiński, where this bluish figure is looming over a cradle, and on the wall in Latin the words "In hoc signo vinces" is inscribed, meaning in this name or symbol we shall conquer. The artist was Polish, and he lived in the decades after World War II. A lot of his works encapsulate symbolism referring to the Holocaust. Now, what makes this saying so interesting is that we shall conquer under this and that name was used by the Nazis, but it was also used by various religions, including Christianity. The Titanic. Titanic explores the theme of class struggles, highlighting how upper-class passengers enjoy better treatment, living conditions, and a distinct worldview compared to the lower-class passengers, who endured poorer accommodation and harsh realities. Despite these differences, both classes ultimately face the same fate: death. Žižek suggests that regardless of societal status, we all share a common humanity and mortality, revealing the limits of ideological division, like class. He also discusses the love story between Jack and Rose. Their seemingly perfect romance is cut short by Jack's premature death, forever encapsulating their relationship as an idealized, perfect love story. Žižek likes to argue that the illusion of perfection is more perfect than perfection itself. Had their love continued, it might have faded over time through experiences like divorce or infidelity. Jack's death freezed the relationship in time, leaving it as an eternal, unattainable ideal, an image of love that will never fade because it was never fully realized. He now moves on to the subject of religion in the film. He uses this famous quote from one of my favorite books, Brothers Karamazov, where Dmitri says that if God is dead, then everything is permitted. Now, on the surface, this obviously sounds true, but to Žižek, this is exactly the opposite. It is when God is dead that everything is not permitted. There are a lot of things that people would not have done if it were not for their firm belief in religion. They use this framework of religion to live out their extremist views that they claim God commanded them to do. Let's just take, for example, 9/11. Now, his point is that even though people may claim to reject God or religious authority, the structure of belief, guilt, and morality persists in society. In fact, he suggests that it is precisely when people declare that God is dead that they become even more trapped within moral and ideological frameworks. When people abandon explicit belief in a higher power or divine law, they don't actually become free from moral rules. Instead, new forms of authority, guilt, and social obligation emerge to fill that void. He now moves on to the movie, I think it was The Last Temptation of Christ. One of Žižek's key points about Christianity is tied to the moment when Jesus is crucified, particularly when he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Or Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. For Žižek, this moment represents a profound shift in the concept of divinity. Traditionally, it has been interpreted as Jesus in his human form, expressing the depth of his suffering. However, Žižek offers a different reading. He sees it as the moment where God himself, through Jesus, is acknowledging abandonment. It is as though God experiences the absence of God, and this is crucial for his understanding of Christianity. Once Žižek put it so poetically, saying something to the extent of that, the suffering which characterizes individual human life is so intense that even if God himself were to undergo it, it would test his faith to the point where he would no longer believe in his own existence. I think this is just mind-blowing, but that's Žižek for you. He's just such an original thinker. But anyways, Žižek then goes on to argue that the moment on the cross is central to understanding Christianity's relationship with atheism, which is very odd. He claims that God's abandonment of Jesus is symbolic of a deeper truth, the death of God, or the collapse of traditional, omnipotent, all-controlling divine figure. In this scene, Christianity itself contains the seeds of atheism. This is why he says that to become a true atheist, one has to go through Christianity, because Christianity, in its core narrative, involves God's self-negation, a divine experience of forsakenness that clears the way for a world without the need for a higher authority. It's indeed very paradoxical. It's not an idea I've heard before, but his interpretation of the world is fascinating, to say the least. You can't help but sit and wonder about these strange yet somewhat logical, coherent arguments. But yeah, these were some of the key ideas in the movie, although I left out quite a bit. So if any of these ideas interest you, I highly recommend watching the full movie. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate the support I'm getting from these videos. If you found anything I said interesting or want to hear more, please subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel a lot. And most of all, I hope to see you again.